will be evaluating speaker Todd. David, would you please stand and give the objectives for Todd, please?
I'm unmuted right now. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I have the privilege of evaluating Todd for the second time. This is Todd's second speech he gave, I think it was 3 weeks ago, Todd. And Todd will be taking the feedback I gave him from the speech 3 weeks ago. And this is from Pathways. It is the Dynamic Leadership Path, Level 1. And this is speech number 2. And the project is called Evaluation and Feedback. So the objectives that Todd is asking me to look for is on his delivery. It's all about delivery tonight. He's wanting me to look for comfort, gestures, connection with the audience, and vocal variety, pace, and volume. And this is based on the feedback I gave Todd 3 weeks ago. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, David. Now I would like to introduce our first speaker, Todd. His title of his speech is Change for Good.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Have you ever procrastinated on something that you felt was really important? My first most painful procrastination experience was while I was writing my first technical conference paper. I was in graduate school at the time, and I was working with a group of students that I worked closely with. They were good friends, and we had worked together and supported each other for the past 2 years. And they were co-authors on this paper. So I felt the respect of this team was at stake with how well I did with the writing that I performed. And my advisor had included myself and some of the other students as co-authors on some previous papers he'd written, but I hadn't contributed to any of the writing, and I hadn't developed the skills that were needed to write this kind of technical paper. So in the weeks that preceded this deadline, I struggled. I tweaked the introduction, rewrote it over and over again. I tweaked the figures, and I just didn't make a lot of progress. It was really slow, and it wasn't until the last week before the deadline that I finally started to get something done that really mattered. And really, I got all the work done in the last 2 days before the deadline. Those 2 days were painful. I had stayed awake for 2 days straight, over 60 hours, not gotten any sleep, and I finally got it done though. And it was actually a positive experience. I felt like I'd overcome this Herculean object. I didn't get it off till the very last minute, FedExed it away for the paper submission deadline, but it was done. And I was overjoyed with the feeling of, having it behind me and the success of having done that. And that led to a long, successful paper writing career. So it was really a positive experience. Have you ever had a similar experience? Have you struggled over the past couple of months with the disruptions in your life, with the challenges of not being able to maintain the routines and habits, the good routines and habits that you had in your life in the same way that you were able to do before? Well, I recently was talking with one of the guys at work that I work closely with, and he was describing exactly this kind of challenge. He had always been a really productive, consistently productive engineer and really good guy. But since the lockdown, trying to work at home, he just couldn't do things the way he'd always done. And he was just not feeling that great about himself. So I talked with Mark about the 3 things that I found really help to make lasting change. And these are ability, prompts, and shine. Ability, the first element, is important because it determines how easy or hard something is for you to do. And the easier something is for you, the more likely you are to do it. If you develop skills and break things down to make them easy, then you can ensure that you'll be able to take the steps you need to change. The second element, prompts, Prompts are simply reminders, and they're important because you won't be able to remember to take the steps you need to change unless you're prompted. Otherwise, you just won't be as consistent as you need to be to take those steps and to be able to maintain those good routines and habits. And lasting change depends on being consistent. The third element, shine. Shine is very important because it's the most effective thing you can do to help motivate yourself. Shine is that feeling of success. And so the more successful you feel, that helps motivate you, and that really helps you to take action. And as you take action, you feel more successful. When you feel good, that's what it takes to change for good. And if you learn to cultivate that feeling of shine, then you can do anything. Mark and I talked for a good while about these three elements, and he came away with some ideas that he had for himself that he wanted to do to try to make changes and get himself back on track to be as productive and feel as good about himself as he'd always been able to be. What is the most important change that you want to make? I ask you to envision that change and to get it clearly in your mind, and then to think about how you can help yourself to make that change. First, think about ability. What can you do to break it down, to get help, and to develop the skills you need to make it easy? Second, think about prompts. What can you do to consistently remind yourself of the steps you need to change? And third, think about shine. What makes you feel really successful, and how can you get that feeling of success with each small step you take? You can make any change you want if you learn to apply these three elements consistently. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Now we will go on to evaluator number 2, which is Morel. He will be evaluating